With ease. Shuttle doors hissed open, and there she was. Everything about her was different. Her skin had a faint, pearlescent shimmer. Her eyes were the color of twilight, and her movements were so graceful they almost seemed to defy gravity. We all knew she was from off-world, a delegate from a newly contacted civilization, but the official briefing was short on details and long on warnings. Maintain a respectful distance. Do not initiate contact. Do not approach. The words echoed in my mind, a stark contrast to the quiet curiosity I felt. Every day for a week, it was the same routine. She would enter the communal mess hall, and a sudden, awkward silence would fall over the room. People would avert their eyes, conversations would drop to a whisper, and an invisible wall would materialize around her. No one sat at her table. It was as if she was a ghost, present but untouchable. I felt a pang of something. Not pity, that would be arrogant, but a deep sense of shared loneliness. Here we were, light years from our respective homes, surrounded by strangers. And yet we were all enforcing a suffocating isolation on the one person who was arguably the most alone. I'm a xenobotanist, not a diplomat. My job is to understand life, to see the connections between different species. What I saw was being treated like a specimen in a jar, not a person. The fear in the room was palpable. It wasn't hostility, but a deep-seated apprehension of the unknown. Her culture, her biology, her intentions, they were all giant question marks, and humanity, for all its bluster about exploration, has always been afraid of what it doesn't understand. So, I watched her eat, slowly and deliberately. Her gaze drifting over the sterile, grey walls of the mess hall. I saw the subtle slump in her shoulders, a universal sign of weariness. I wondered what she was thinking. Did she find our food strange? Did our hushed whispers sound like threats? Did she regret coming all this way just to be met with a cold shoulder? I couldn't stand it anymore. Solito. The official directive was about preventing a diplomatic incident. But wasn't this silent ostracization an incident in itself? One day, I decided to break the unspoken rule. My heart was hammering against my ribs. My palms were slick with sweat. I grabbed my tray, my standard issue nutrient paste, looking particularly took a deep breath, weaving through the crowded tables, feeling every eye in the room lock onto me. The whispers stopped. The clatter of cutlery ceased. It was just the soft hum of the ship's life support and the pounding in my ears. I walked directly to her table. It was a large, circular table meant for 8, and she sat alone, a solitary island in a sea of humanity. I stopped a few feet away. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sounding strained and too loud in the sudden quiet. "Is this seat taken?" It was a stupid, cliché question. Of course, it wasn't taken. The entire table was empty. The whole section of the mess hall was empty. She looked up, and for the first time, I saw her face up close. Her features were delicate, almost sculpted, and those twilight eyes held a galaxy of unreadable emotions. She didn't speak, she just tilted her head slightly, a gesture of curiosity. A long moment passed. I could feel the collective breath of the entire room being held. I thought maybe I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe she would take offense. Maybe the security guards would come and drag me away for breaking protocol. Then, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Just a simple dip of her chin. It wasn't a warm welcome, but it wasn't a rejection either. It was permission. I let out a breath. I didn't realize I'd been holding and slid into the chair opposite her. The silence was heavy, thick with tension. I just focused on my food, trying to eat normally, even though it felt like I was chewing on sand. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her mimic my actions, picking up her own utensil and taking a small, precise bite of her food. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The background noise of the mess hall slowly returned, but it was different now. The whispers were more urgent, the glances more frequent. I had crossed a line, and now everyone was watching to see what would happen next. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to say something. Kai, I said, pushing my tray slightly forward. I study plants. From other worlds. I felt foolish, like I was stating the obvious. She stopped eating and placed her utensil down neatly. She looked at me, really looked at me this time. Her lips, a shade darker than her skin, parted slightly. My name is Lyra, she said. Think. Her voice was like wind chimes, a soft, melodic sound that was utterly captivating. It was the first time any of us had heard her speak. I study stars. A faint smile touched her lips. It transformed her face, softening her alien features into something undeniably beautiful. And in that moment, the invisible wall between us shattered. The fear, the warnings, the protocol, it all just melted away. She wasn't an alien delegate or a diplomatic risk. She was Lyra. And she studied stars. The next day, when I walked into the mess hall, she was already there. And she wasn't alone. One of the engineers, a woman named Lena, was sitting at her table, hesitantly showing her a data slate with a ship schematic. The day after that, 2 more people joined, a medic and a geologist. Soon, her table was the most popular one in the room, chat. It became a hub of quiet conversation, of shared diagrams and hesitant questions. The change was incredible. People started seeing her not as the alien, but as Lyra. They learned she had a dry sense of humor, that she found our concept of weekends fascinating, and that the constellations looked entirely different from her homeworld. The fear was replaced by curiosity, the silence by conversation. Hooray! I never got in trouble for breaking protocol. In fact, a few weeks later, my commanding officer pulled me aside. He didn't say much, just clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Good work, Kai. Sometimes the best way to build a bridge is for someone to be brave enough to take the first step across." Looking back, it was such a small thing, just choosing to sit at an empty table. But it changed everything. Too, it reminded me that behind every title, every warning, and every unknown, there's just a person. Sometimes, all it takes to connect is to ignore the voices telling you to stay away and just say hello. It turns out, she wasn't waiting for a diplomat or an official envoy. She was just waiting for a friend. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.